Coming up next on Access Framingham, a visit to Panama with my guest, Joel Winett. Stay tuned. Hello, I'm Jack Barron, host of Travels with Jack on Access Framingham TV, where guests share with our audience a recent trip, a vacation, a cruise, or maybe a day trip right here in New England. You'll see their photos and hear about the exciting places they have visited. Today, I welcome back to Travels with Jack, Framingham resident Joel Winett. In February 2016, Joel and his lovely wife Ruth visited the Central American country Panama. As you would expect, the Panama Canal was the main feature of their trip, but it was not the only one. Ruth and Joel took side trips to national parks and the northern city of Boquete. They also toured Panama City and visited a synagogue founded in 1876. What parts of the world have you visited? Please be my guest on Travels with Jack and share your travel experience with our viewing audience. Just contact us here at Access Framingham Television and let us know you'd like to be a guest. You can phone AFTV at 508-875-5434, or you can send an email message to info@accessfram.tv. One of our associate producers will contact you to make arrangements for you to be on our show here on Access Framingham TV. If you don't live in Massachusetts, we would be pleased to assist with your travel to the Access Framingham studio. And now, let me welcome Joel Winett back to Travels with Jack. Joel, welcome back.
Thank you.
A little history, as I always try to give our audience. Joel Winett is a resident of Framingham for more than 50 years. He and his wife Ruth have 3 children and 7 grandchildren. Joel was a software project manager for many years, and Joel has served as a Framingham town meeting member and former town moderator. Joel has chaired multiple town committees and is currently the chairman of the Cultural Council. Ruth, his wife, is an elected member of the Framingham Library Trustees and president of the Library Foundation, which has raised, Joel was very proud to tell me this, has raised more than $900,000 for the libraries. And Ruth is currently fundraising for a new bookmobile. Joel is a very active traveler and is busy planning a new trip, which he'll share with us when he does it, to Holland and Belgium. And I hope to have him share with our audience his recent visit. He just came back from Portugal. So he is a very, very busy guy. And welcome. So
Portugal was a year ago, and this February I was in Cuba.
Maybe we'll merge Portugal and Cuba. They both speak Spanish. Portugal speaks Portuguese.
And Cuba, everybody speaks English.
Everybody speaks English, really?
So there's no problem there. But those are two separate, very different trips.
Yes.
And then we'll see where we go next. Our next trip is to, as you said, to Holland and Belgium.
You'll enjoy the beer anyway.
But today we're talking about Panama, which people know about the Panama Canal, and that's really what the people know about Panama. We didn't take a formal cruise to Panama, as many people do, but instead we flew down from Miami less than an hour flight from Miami.
Really? It was only an hour?
Less than an hour.
Less than an hour.
To Havana. And not
You
to
mean
Havana.
to Panama City?
I mean, no, I'm sorry, wrong. To Panama City was farther. I was thinking of my Cuba trip. No, we flew to Panama City, and I had made our own arrangements. So we stayed in Panama City, which is a very industrious commercial center with tall buildings, as you will see. And then we began our trip.
You were going to give me a little history on Panama.
I'll give you a history on Panama. I'll also give you a little overview of where we've been on the trip. We have the main city, Panama City.
Yep.
We have the canal.
Our executive producer, Bill, if you can, will take a map if it can come up.
Yes, it will come up.
Okay.
They'll show us where we've been on the city. But then we go from the city itself. We go to the jungles of Panama, and we visit the indigenous Embera peoples who are not modern. They're really natives, live off the land.
Really, and they still are allowed to live that way?
They were arranged to be farmers and fishermen, and they gave them tourists come there, and so they feed them the fish from the river, and so that's these people. And then we went to a city in the far western part of Panama, and so that's kind of Boquete, and that's the overview of where we go. So first we'll talk a little bit about Panama. There's the Panama flag, which is known. And then you have a map of Panama. You see Central America right in the middle there, and there's the country of Panama, which is basically north, I guess you could say, of Colombia. Panama used to be part of Colombia, and on the south or on the east, and on the west side is Costa Rica. But Colombia gained the independence from Spain in 1821, and then from 1821 for another 100 years, Panama was part of Colombia. Then in 1921, Colombia gave Panama the independence, and then they were their own country, working on getting commerce from and taxes and fees that people want to travel from the Atlantic to the Pacific. Originally, there was a train that you'd unload the goods from the train from the ships on the Atlantic, put it on a train. Train would go across the isthmus, and then they take it on the other side, put it back onto a Pacific ship.
Oh, so everything had to be moved by hand?
By hand, both on and off.
Oh, my God.
On and off of a big ocean liner.
Yep.
And of course, the French were the first people that volunteered that they were going to build a canal. The French had some political problems and some engineering problems that they were going to cut through the isthmus, and basically they were going to make a sea level canal. That didn't work out right. Eventually the American U.S. engineers decided the way to do it was to have locks. And so a ship goes into an area, then the water is filled, or the other way, going from the Atlantic to the Pacific. They drain the water out, and the ship goes down, then sails out the locks. And they go down a little bit and through a lake, and then there's another lock. And then the same thing.
Like a stairway.
It's a stairway. And they do the next one. And there are 3 locks. It takes 5 hours, basically, for a ship to go from the Atlantic to the Pacific. So the canal, and as you recall from the picture that was up there a little bit, Panama is an east-west country, and the canal is north-south that cuts across it. And what you're looking now on the screen is called the East-West Bridge. It's showing, and that's
looks like our bridge in Boston, the Zakim Bridge.
The Zakim Bridge, but that's a bridge that connects South America with North America through Central America. And that's, there's another bridge that farther up that does the same thing, but this bridge was put together as part of the canal.
What do you mean? This bridge was built in the early 1900s?
No, yeah, early.
Really? Okay.
And it's 50 miles long.
The canal.
The canal is 50 miles long, and it was built by the U.S. engineers. And then Jimmy Carter, as president in 1970, made an agreement with Panama to turn it over to Panama as of 1999. And so it was turned over, and Panama runs it, and been running it since 1999. And then they realized it needed to be wider. The ships are bigger, so they're in the process right now, it's almost completed, of widening the canal. And
so new locks and everything.
Yeah, I guess the locks will be widened, right? Because the ship, you need to get ships. You'll see when the ship goes through, there's like maybe 6 inches between the ship and the side of the lock.
Oh, really?
The ships are very big.
This is Panama City we're looking at.
So now you're looking at a view that gives you a view of that is a modern city with skyscrapers.
I see.
A lot of banking that goes on, and we're about to take a tour. Our first tour is the tour of the canal and the administration. So what you see here is the administration building. That's where the management of the canal project, U.S. manager, had their headquarters.
Oh, really?
And the building is still there.
It's a nice-looking building.
And it was maintained. And then there's in front of the building, that big solid granite piece is commemorative to the work that was done. And there's a model there of the sculpture of the workers that worked on the canal.
Where did most of the workers come from? Were they Americans who did the work, or?
There were Chinese that came in to work on the railroad, and the Chinese also worked on the canal. It was grueling work.
So the United States brought in Chinese from China to do the work.
Brought in, or they came themselves.
Really?
Or
okay.
however they got there.
Now let me ask you: did you notice? Is there still a big Chinese population in?
I didn't
notice it.
Didn't recognize that at all. So what you're seeing here is a patrol boat. This is a patrol boat that cruises up and down. And one of the first places we went to was a museum. Not shown here. I don't have of all the artifacts that was and the history of the canal being built, and there was a clipper ship that came in with the Chinese that is shown on the next slide, and that's the ship in which the Chinese came from China.
Really?
How did they get across Africa, or did they come? No, they probably. Maybe they came the other way. Maybe they came
on the west coast.
They came in the west coast through the Pacific on a boat like this, and that's in 1854 when they worked on the railroad and then the canal. This is one of the dams where they dammed up the area and made a lake. So a man-made lake, so that the ships can sail from one area through the lake, and then there also was all the excavation that they had. There's a big hill. That hill is a mountain of excavation.
Really?
And when you dig things out for the canal, what do you do with all the land? And so you stack it up. And there it goes.
And that's what they did.
and there it goes. So now we have a tanker. I believe that might be an oil tanker. But remember, as I said, it's commercial. The whole purpose of this is to bring food and goods and cars. And we stood and watched. We saw a Peugeot, a tanker, a
French
boat,
tanker,
full of cars going through the canal. And there's in the next slide, you'll see the cranes used to load up the
ships.
It looks like stairs or chairs, but that's a crane that's going to lower down and be able to connect the land with the tankers, or not the tankers,
and these are the locks.
So that's a lock. That's an administration house, and you see it's half opened. And on the next slide, you'll see a tanker entering. There's a big tanker entering the lock, flat, and then it's going through the lock.
But you're right, there's not a lot of room between one side and the other.
You see the road on either side, and there's not much there. And then on the next slide, it's going out into the lake, into the area. So on the next slide, you'll see a picture of some boats by a pier, and you'll also see a tour boat with some other tourists, and the boats are in the lock. So you see a tanker, and you see a couple tour boats and pleasure vehicles. So there's a picture of the lock, and they have guide wires that will help a boat go through. Now there's the lock there's the wire, the guide wires, with people on the top of the lock helping the tanker or the ship go through. They're fixing the wires. And on the next slide, you'll have a pleasure boat going through. Look at the size of the pleasure boat compared to the tanker or the cargo ship that fits the whole area. So then we go through, going through, the locks are about to close. The locks will, and once the locks are closed, it gets filled up, and the boats rise, and then they sail out the other side and get through.
So what did they do? Pump in the water?
They pump in the water from one side to the other.
Yep.
And the boats just float themselves up. So that's a picture of my wife Ruth, and it's warm. So we have our sun hats on.
This was what time of the year again you went?
We went in February.
So it was, and it was
still warm.
Comfortable down there.
It was comfortable. No, it was warm.
Really?
It was hot.
February was hot. Okay. Look at that! Wow.
And so there's a picture of the Bridge of the Americas. That's another bridge from one area.
And this was all built, you're saying, in the early 1900s?
1900s, right.
Wow, okay.
And so there's another big picture of the Bridge of the Americas from one area to across the canal. So now you've got a picture, turn around, and we got a picture of the city again, the Panama City, the commercialism that goes on. And then we're going to go up to Anton Hill, which is a lookout area where we can look back and from the 654 Tower Hill, and we look back to the Panama Canal, and we look back.
Oh, I see. The canal is behind you.
And this was the highest. That's a house with a gated house for some dignitaries.
A private home.
I think it's a embassy.
Oh, okay.
An embassy house.
Any idea how many people live in Panama?
I don't, in my notes, I didn't do the research on...
Okay, that's all right. We'll forgive you.
on
But it looks like a very big city.
It's very big, a lot of banks. You go from corner to corner, there's a bank. And we went, and they have shopping districts, and they have what you have any place else. You want to cross a 6-lane highway, you don't cross. You go down the stairs, go underneath it, and you cross over and come up on the other side.
Now, did you find it a clean city?
Panama City itself is clean.
It is, okay.
The restaurants, we end up we stayed at the Hyatt, which was nice, and we went to a walking distance to a restaurant we liked, and we went to the same restaurant 3 times.
Oh, you did?
Which is
what
not
kind
usually
of food
what
did
we
they
like.
have?
Not usually what we like. It was Panamanian food, or we had fish. They also had beef, which they would scrape the beef from a big piece of beef and give you a slice on your plate.
Was the food more Americanized, would you say, or more South American, Latin?
From where we went, it was Americanized.
Okay.
Although a lot of fish.
And you said to me before we started today that there were a lot of American retired people there.
That's true. People go there for the what would you say, the climate?
The weather, sure.
The weather, and it's not even though Panama is a commercial city, but people have one job when they were home, and they can go to Panama and be driving a taxi, and then some people are bankers, what have you.
But I mean, okay, now this is...
So, we're now going to look at some of the buildings around. This is Gary's museum,
the architect.
The architect Gary, who designed the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao, in Spain. And this is a couple of different views of the same building. And then also there's a Gary building down at MIT, which has the same look of no square walls, no square this. In this case, the roof was in, looks to me from that picture, looks like it's a shambles. It looks like a building falling down.
What building is this?
This is the Gary Museum.
Oh, it's a museum.
It's a museum. It's 1 acre of display space, and inside they show the history of the Panama and commercial.
Oh, so it's a national museum.
It's a national museum on a little jetty on the water, near the water.
I got you.
So now on that area, the isthmus, there was also Smithsonian has a marine exhibit on the causeway. And so you're looking here, and the next few slides will show different fish, animals, turtles, starfish, yellow, blue fish, sea anemones.
This is what, in an aquarium?
This is an outdoor aquarium.
Okay.
Outdoor aquarium, and this is the end of it. This is the some seagulls and birds that's sitting on the rock. So that's kind of a modern a tourist site. You go to Gary's Museum, you go to you see the aquarium, what have you.
And
so
this is
now we're going to
Tomas Arias?
Pedro Arias de Valle is the founder, the first leader of Panama.
Of modern Panama.
Of modern Panama.
Okay.
And let's see, in 19, and then there was, the next one was Manuel Batista, which he was friendly with the Americans and enabled and this picture is General Herrera, and so they were walking around Casco Viejo, the old area of Panama, and so you're looking at some of the ruins.
This building is what? Do you recall? It's a pretty building. Look at the stone, the mosaic.
It's empty. It's it's the leftovers. Just the facade is there to look at. I think the next one is there's another remnant of a building with modern apartments around it. So that's the modern apartment around it, and it's an old wall. We've had some kids who are riding their bicycles, but you're walking around the old city of Panama, and it's very safe. This is the this is a church.
A church, yeah.
That dates back to 1680.
Really?
A Baroque facade.
So Panama City, even in the 1600s, you're saying, was somewhat developed.
It was developed. It was a central location.
But part of Colombia at that time, under Spanish rule.
Under Spanish rule first. Then Colombia got their independence from Spain.
Well, there were a bunch of Spanish countries in South America that all kind of got their freedom at a similar time. I think the Spanish, if I recall my history, did a very bad job managing those nations.
I think that's true.
Yeah.
So from a tourist point of view, you get to see the old buildings. There's a gilded
a
church, and that actually that portion was saved from being ransacked and destroyed. One of the priests miraculously saved it from when people were sacking, pillaging the area. So now this is still in the old city, and it's being spruced up. And so when anything that's colorful, I take a picture. And so you see fences. You see these stuffed animals that they stick up on the fence. You see artwork on a wall. That's another artwork on a wall. And so that's all in Old Panama.
Did you find Old Panama much nicer than Old Havana?
They're both similar. You're right. When you
Panama though looks much richer than Havana.
Panama is actually older than. I mean, as I'm recalling from last February when we were in Old Havana. It's been cleaned up more. Cuba is developed more. Panama's still a poor country.
It is, because when I'm looking at those skyscrapers, it doesn't look too poor.
But you're looking at the commercial part,
right?
Not the people themselves, and the government the government of Panama has not been a good government over the years. A lot of corruption in Panama. So if I have any Panama friends, so you're now looking at the more modern building. It's a church in the newer section of Panama, and you're looking at stained glass windows. Always a good excuse to take a picture. And then from here,
that's that building you have in your little book, the screw building.
That's the screw, exactly what it's called.
Yeah.
It's next to a bank building, and I don't know the architect, but it is.
It's a great looking building.
It's very unusual.
Yep.
And you tend to take a number of pictures from different angles, and you juxtapose the modern McDonald's arch with the screw building and billboards. So
you say it's a poor country, but honestly, Joel, look at this. It looks like Bal Harbor, Florida.
This is Panama City,
right?
With the skyscrapers and the business.
But somebody has to be living there.
So that's and they get the taxes from the ships that go through the canal, and the money goes through.
Did you learn at all what is their overall tax structure for the people who live there? Do they have high taxes, low taxes?
I guess I didn't
look into it. Okay.
So what we're going to say now is one of the things that we do when we go to a trip is we look for a synagogue in the area, And so before I left, I made some contacts, and I contacted the rabbi of this Kol Shiroth Israel synagogue. It was established in 1876. This is just a picture of the outside, and just staying on it a bit. I guess we can't go back. This synagogue was originally a Sephardic Jews that were there,
okay.
And then over time it became a progressive and a reform synagogue. Very egalitarian. Thank you. You come back. You wouldn't almost say non-denominational. They have
really?
Some of the synagogues, and there were a number. There were 5 synagogues in Panama City. 2 of them are Orthodox. This is a reform or progressive synagogue. The rabbi invited us to his house for dinner. We had arranged that beforehand when I said I wanted to come. And he had another couple as well with us for dinner. And they talked about the country. And they actually told us about Boquete that we're going to visit at the end. And they told us about somebody, oh, look up my friend Morton, who's in Boquete. So it was very good.
Now, let me ask you a question. I find it a little unusual that they would have 5 synagogues in Panama City. It doesn't strike me as,
people came from Spain.
From Spain.
From Spain in the early times.
Yep.
And
so you're saying when they had the problems in Spain and Portugal with the eviction of the Jews, some of them went to Panama.
Some of them went to Panama if they could.
Really? And stayed there?
I guess.
Evidently.
Yeah.
So
and then others have come. Europeans or Americans have come to Panama. So now we're part of our tour. We're now going to take a walk through a national park, and then you look at the animals. This is in the middle of a big city. It's like Central Park of New York,
yep.
New York City. We walk around, and there's some turtles, and there's a path to walk. My wife with her backpack, and we walk around. Okay, so that's Panama City. Now hold here. We're going to leave Panama City, and we're going to go to the indigenous people. First, it's called the Chagres National Park, and we went through. Now, this is a poor area.
Who built these homes? These look like they're all kind of very similar.
They're shacks.
No, they look nicer than shacks.
Well, they're really not nice.
Okay.
They're doing all right, but it's out into the jungle. It's in the outskirts of the jungle.
Yep.
I'm not sure if the government put those buildings together for. That's definitely not Panama City.
Okay.
In Panama City, you see commercialism, and now you see those houses. And then the next one, I think you see some fruit trees in front of the houses. And so there's a couple of slides with some fruit trees. And that's, you can see that's a concrete building. I still call it a hut.
So the government there, you would say, is a capitalist-based government?
Yeah.
They're not like the Nicaraguan socialists or what's going on in Venezuela.
No, it's not definitely not. Cuba.
Not Cuba.
It's not Cuba.
Did you hear of a lot of Venezuelans? Venezuelans are leaving in droves. They can't get food, water, anything. Have a lot gone to Panama, or you didn't hear much about that?
No, I didn't hear much about that.
You didn't? Okay.
Europeans are going to go to Panama.
Europeans? Really?
And the Americans. So we're out of Panama City. We're heading now into the jungle. We're going to now we get the next one. We go by canoe.
Tasipono Bagabagadi.
So that's a sign out into the beginning of the jungle.
Yep.
And we have a guide who takes us in a canoe, a cutout canoe.
Dug up a guide.
We had arranged this beforehand.
Okay.
And so we were in this canoe.
I have to compliment you. All your trips, you plan it down. You got the guides, everything.
Well, everything is available from the web.
Yep.
You could. That's a guide on going along. Well, this is the guide came with me. First, he takes us with a taxi with a car, and then we parked at an area, and then we get into the canoes, and we go up the river, and we stop one place for a swim. We had our bathing suits, and we're really going into the jungle.
Now, were these guides recommended online when you shopped for them?
It's a tour. It's a tourist.
But you looked at reviews and
I
recommendations?
looked at reviews. Other people had recommended it.
So they didn't say, you weren't afraid they were going to take you and Ruth and hijack you somewhere?
No.
You did your research.
It's, what's the name of the organization that sets up tours? They're all over the world in different places.
Oh, so you used, some professional,
some
I got you.
professional tours.
Yep.
So now you see these huts, the thatched roof huts, and that's where
There's you and Ruth.
my wife.
This looks almost like the South Pacific with the thatched roofs.
Well, thatched roof.
They do that kind of roof all through Bora Bora and all those places.
And a lot of kids and families running around. So we're just there. Now there's me with a chief in the middle, and the chief and the chief.
Was this your tour guide?
No.
Who was that?
This was
a fellow tourist.
No. Okay, so it's me, the chief in the middle, and that might be our tour guide with the backpack on the right.
The chief looks like he's out of a Hollywood set.
Well, he's wearing. He's not wearing much.
Yeah.
He's got
but
shorts.
But he's got a big smile. He looks like he's.
And I'm wearing pants to keep from the mosquitoes.
Did you find a lot of bugs?
We were covered.
You were covered.
But
okay.
here's the typical dress of the natives, and they cover themselves. The women cover themselves up for the tourist, but they're very colorful. And here's the kids walking around, sitting around, in colorful dresses, bare-chested, brown.
That's all right.
Little kids with their dolls.
Yep.
And so those are two separate pictures. There's my wife with one of the women there. And they put some flowers on her head.
And they did a dance for you.
And they're doing some dances.
This looks to me like a Polynesian trip.
It is. Polynesia, it could be. They put baskets of leaves, and they follow their native customs that they had carried with them for years. Now the government encouraged them to put their efforts to use.
And this is
and
their
these are
store.
their trinkets and bracelets, earrings, necklaces that they're up for sale. So they sell them, and the tourists buy them. And we bought something too. So that's our expedition. There's rugs. They made rugs that we didn't take home. So they have helped the people have some commerce.
It sounds to me this government is not that terrible.
No,
I see them
this is
helping the people.
But they did move them from their land.
Okay.
And where they wanted to build roads, they'd have to move them out, and they put them in almost like reservations. So it's up the river, and that's a reservation of where they had to be.
I think another country moved their Indians on reservations.
Yes, I think so. Not the greatest history. So we go from the jungle, and we go back. We go. That was a day trip. We're going up to Boquete. We flew from Panama City to David, which is where the airport is, and then we had another hour by car to the city of Boquete.
And what made you pick Boquete?
Word of mouth.
Okay.
That I had heard it beforehand, and so I got the flight reservations beforehand.
So somebody said to you, if you're going to be in Panama, look into Boquete,
actually, it's my nephew, who actually does some traveling, and he's an ornithologist.
Okay.
And he's been to Panama, and he's been to Ecuador, and he said, when you go to Panama, go to Boquete.
Oh, okay.
So my nephew had said that. And so this is a small village, here it is, like Framingham outside of Boston.
Yep.
Well, not quite, more than that. Going up to
This was how long, how many miles from Panama City? Approximately.
37 miles from the border of Costa Rica. It was an hour flight.
Okay, so it's a couple hundred miles.
A couple hundred miles.
Okay.
It was away. So this is the bedroom with the artwork out on the outskirts of the city. And one of the people that we met, that we met at the rabbi's house, said, when you go there, look up, and where is Bill Rabkin? Barbara Rabkin. And this is Barbara Rabkin, Chicagoan.
Okay.
And with her artwork, her hand creation, she's holding up this knitted.
And this is where she ended up, from Chicago
to Chicago
to
Boquete. And next to that house was a garage, which they converted into a room. It's like a bed and breakfast.
Yep.
And her garage she rents out, and she showed us her artwork that she creates. There were other pieces of hanging on the wall. There was some artwork. It was quite nice.
Did you talk with them at all?
Yes, well, she gave us a tour.
Okay.
And it was cooler than it was in Panama City.
Does she miss the United States?
No, in fact, she's an organizer for activities for the Boquete peoples, like a senior center.
Oh, so she became a regular activist in the community.
Activist in the community.
Okay.
And her husband, Morton Bakehouse.
Yeah.
What does it say?
Home of the rye guy.
The rye guy. He makes the rye bread. Panaderia Bakehouse.
Okay.
So in the next slide, you will see the bakery. That's Morton.
Yep.
Morton Rabkin.
And he makes the only rye bread in the town.
In the town, and in the ovens, and it's clean. And he said hello, and I gave him his regards from his friends in Panama City. So this was, little.
And this is where he ended up. He wanted to bake bread.
He was a lawyer.
You told me he was a lawyer.
So that's a little side
that
thing.
It's
now that wasn't something
that
we planned.
He went from the courts of Chicago to baking in the middle of
Panama.
In the jungle yet.
Yeah, it's definitely an
interesting change of life.
So it's like living up in New Hampshire, maybe, or something like that.
No, this is a little more rural.
It's definitely rural. And the other thing we did is now we go to a coffee plantation, and we learn about coffee beans.
Yep.
This is a guide who's carrying a wagon with coffee beans.
Well, you got to remember, it's part of Colombia. Colombia is a huge coffee industry.
Panamanian coffee made. So this is a modern truck.
Yeah.
Coffee truck.
How was the food in this little town?
Not good.
Not good. Okay.
I mean, we went someplace. We were there. I don't know what we got. Some kind of.
But you weren't impressed with the food.
Or the restaurant, and it was.
How was Morton's rye bread, though? Did you try his rye bread?
I didn't try his rye bread.
Okay.
But the streets were cobblestone streets.
Yep.
It wasn't like Panama City with the underpasses and everything's clean.
All right. It's more rural.
This is definitely rural, and the purpose of going there is we're looking at the coffee beans.
Okay.
And there he took a tour. And I think there were half a dozen of us that were just they guided us around, this guy showing his beans. The next slide, I think, will show the
coffee beans. Okay.
Green beans and the red beans. I think the green turn red, or vice versa. The next slide will show them a machine. That's a machine. It just looks like a bunch of metal junk, but that's how they strip the outer leaves from a coffee bean into a grinder.
Oh, you mean so the bean, they take the nub off the bean?
There's taking it. It's 3 layers. A bean has 3 layers.
Go ahead, I'm listening.
Until you finally get to the inside core, the nut that makes coffee. So first you got to strip off.
There's a husk on the outside.
The husk,
yep.
And then another layer, a pulpy layer.
Yep.
And then that has to come off until you then get to the bean, and you get the clean beans, which will then have to be washed
and roasted.
And roasted. And I guess I didn't put the pictures of the roasting machines.
Oh, I didn't know that. So
and they do it right on
work before we get that little coffee bean.
Before you get that coffee bean, yep, it's a whole procedure. And of course, what they do, that's he's holding a bunch of beans. And it's not a modern factory, but it's a factory.
Now, what did they tell you? Did they tell you their beans were a particular variety, or?
Well, I don't know what the name is.
But
But the next slide will show you the coffee beans.
Panama coffee.
Panama coffee, Don Alfredo coffee beans. So they do this all right on the plantation, I'll call it, on the factory.
Did you have a cup of coffee there?
They did.
Yeah. How was the coffee? Yeah.
I'm not a coffee drinker.
All right.
But you bought the coffee, Don Alfredo, and there's a certificate.
That's the Panama.
The Panama certificate that these beans
authentic Panama beans.
So that was one of the items which we saw. So from there, we are in Boquete, and there's a fairgrounds, and so we're going to go look at flowers and gardens and other sites. And so this is the next slide. Will show we're going into a fairgrounds.
Very nice.
Let's see the.
I'm so impressed that you locate all these spots ahead of time.
Boquete.
No, but I mean the fairgrounds.
The fairgrounds, you say, and we walked. We walk a bit. You got to have good shoes, and a hat. And so we've got this. This is a fairgrounds with another swan that's in the area, and you take pictures. What's good. The next one will be some more gardens. There's formal gardens, and it's kind of nice to.
It is nice
to suspend an hour. I think we were there a good hour or more, and so therefore.
Now, is it a little cooler?
Oh yeah, this is cooler.
Oh, this area was
This
cooler.
whole area is up in the mountains compared
so the temperature is much more comfortable.
Oh, very, very comfortable. That's why the Americans will go to Boquete. Panama City is
too hot.
It's too hot. But we have a few more slides, and we'll go up to close the trip. There's my wife and I were kind of almost done with our trip.
This is still Boquete.
This is still Boquete. Last few slides are Boquete, and the display of stuffed animals. You'll see next a grasshopper coming up.
Did Ruth like this trip? How'd she like it?
She liked it because we got to see the people.
Okay.
She liked it because we went out. We didn't just stick to Panama City. If you just take a cruise to Panama, like many people do, and they go on a big cruise ship. Cruise ship goes through the canal, and you learn about the canal.
Okay.
But we did more than that. We went into the jungle. We saw the natives there. We went into Boquete. So we were in 3 areas of Panama, and on our own.
So you got a sense, whereas you're saying to me, if Jack if you just got on a cruise ship, all you'd see is Panama City.
That's right.
So you'd say it might be better to fly down, stay at a nice hotel, and take a day cruise through the canal.
And my wife likes to find a hotel with a swimming pool.
Yep.
So I didn't include that picture. We have a swimming pool on the top of the Hyatt, and when you get back to the hotel at 4 o'clock, you like to relax and take a swim. So this is the last few pictures are on that fairgrounds.
Looks like a nice hibiscus flower.
And then I'm looking for the next slide. The next slide are these decorations that they put in the fairgrounds. So we have a couple of the decorations, and then we're going to close up our trip pretty soon.
These are great looking that they do these sculpture.
Yeah, it's sculpt in the. I don't know what to compare with around here.
No, we don't have that here.
There's.
They're cute though.
It could be. Where do we go? Fairgrounds. You know where we went? We went up in the western part of Massachusetts on the New Hampshire border. There's an area.
Like Orange, you're talking, in that area?
Yeah.
Okay.
And at the end on Route 2, there's some flowered covered wagons and a covered bridge as well.
Oh, maybe near Westminster. Beyond near Fitchburg, Leominster.
Yeah,
near
a little bit farther.
I know there's a covered bridge, I think.
So our last part of the trip in Boquete, we get a rainbow.
Oh.
So, I mean, this is the hillside, and I like to put the two pictures together. This is the left side of the rainbow, and here's the right side of the rainbow. And
it looks like a beautiful area.
This is a lush mountain area, but that's not true on the other side. In the jungle we went to was not lush. That was
did the citizenry seem somewhat satisfied with the country, or did you get a sense that there was a lot of turmoil? I guess I don't. I'm trying to phrase it.
I'm trying to say. We did. The only thing to say to talk with people.
Yeah.
We stayed at a hotel, and we want to go to a post office.
Okay.
We have postcards. You buy postcards. We want to go buy some Panamanian stamps and mail them back to our kids.
Okay.
So where do we find it? A post office is in a separate building. You had to go into the shopping mall, and one of the places in the shopping mall was a post office. And first you got to go make sure you get the right amount of money and change it into the pesos. And so we had some dealings with some policemen and how to find where we're going. And where is the post office? Where is the post office? I don't know where the post office is. But we did. We found it. And as far as the bellhops or the taxis, you had to be careful on what kind of taxis. You can have registered taxis and unregistered taxis. The hotel, the Hyatt Hotel, made sure that when I got a taxi. We used a taxi to get to the national park that we went to. That was, get in the taxi and go to the national park.
So when you spoke to cab drivers, did you say to any of them, how do you find the living here? Is it peaceful? No, you didn't quiz them too much.
Somehow or other, I didn't do that.
Okay. But I find, when I go traveling, like in Italy, the cab drivers always complain it's horrible. Rome is horrible. Everything, they give you a litany of their unhappiness.
I would say the tourist. One half of the business, or one part of you're dealing with tourists, or you're dealing with hotel people, and they're very helpful.
Very nice.
You're dealing with restaurants. Some restaurants are good. Some restaurants are not so good. Are the people happy? Streets are paved, and The people are poor. If you see the natives, you can tell the native people.
But it sounds like in
in
looking at the downtown, you must have a lot of Westerners who are living there.
Yeah, both the two areas we went to, Panama City and Boquete, are.
You had a lot of foreigners.
Foreigners who have made their home there.
Yeah.
In fact, I just learned a brother of a friend of ours who lives in Europe.
So there's some attraction there that they're bringing in.
It's stable. You wouldn't be going to Nicaragua.
Right.
You wouldn't be going to Venezuela.
Right. I never hear people say to me, "Oh, you know what? My cousin's moving to Venezuela to retire."
No, but you would say you're moving to Panama. And to retire.
So there must be some attraction there with
the weather is good,
a stability and a lifestyle.
Yeah.
Costa Rica, I also hear people saying they're moving to Costa Rica, although my understanding is you can't leave your property alone there. You have to have it guarded, or you've got to be in a gated community.
Costa Rica was one of our first trips years and years ago. But the people moved to Mexico. San Miguel de Allende in the countryside of Mexico is an American enclave. People retire to Mexico.
Be interesting to see Mexico. They have a new president that was just elected. That'll date this show a little bit. And be interested to see, this is a sunscape there of the end of the trip?
That's the end of the trip. This is Panama City, taken from my hotel.
Beautiful. And this is the end of our show. But before you leave, I just want you to show the audience your little book. Joel does these books. If you can focus in, Mr. Cameraman, on Joel's book a little bit.
Well,
Dave, there you go.
There we go.
Beautiful.
So I have a little summary in my book of where we've gone, just as I told you. And then I have the pictures that you've seen, these are the same pictures that were on here of the canal, the locks, going through
I love what you do.
And
Joel,
this is what I can do.
Thank you, as always, and we'll see you on the next show.